Welcome to the Fearlessly Authentic Sash and Soul podcast, the show that goes beyond the stage, prioritizing a healthy mindset, overall well-being, and triumphs in the pageant journey. In each episode, we dive into the transformative power of embracing authenticity fearlessly.
From mindset mastery and self-care strategies to success stories that inspire, this podcast is your go-to guide for navigating the pageant world with confidence and resilience. Join us as we embark on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and celebrate the stories of those who fearlessly embraced their authenticity on the path to pageant success. I'm Lila Sherry.
And I'm Rayanna Johnson. Welcome to Sash and Soul. Welcome back, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good day.
Good day. For us, it's morning, and I hopped on the call just a little bit late, and Lila's like, literally just rolled out of bed. I'm like, winning.
That's the realness. Happy Friday. We're not always that put together, but we try to be.
We do. But today's going to be a good day. The weather is beautiful, and Lila is going to gallivant over to Milwaukee tonight, and we are going to do just a fun branding photo shoot with our friend Jessica Hammer from Blue Iris Creative. We love her.
We do.
She's good people.
I was going to say that's why I think we're kind of rolling out of bed, because we have a longer night, a longer evening ahead of us. So makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
It's exciting.
Plus, I will be honest, I think both of us, and you can speak for yourself, of course, Lila, but for me, and all of my clients right now, many of them, it's crunch time. I've got a client competing this weekend. I've got a handful competing next weekend, even more the following weekend. June is just a crazy month. And so I'm feeling all the feels of that from my end of things as a coach and mentor. And so that kind of inspired the conversation today. And also, we have been receiving really awesome messages from you guys about just requesting like special guests that you'd love to hear from and content that you want to hear us talk about. And so this was also inspired by your DMs. So we appreciate you reaching out. But Lila, tell me how you are feeling right now as we're like, well, today as we're recording, it's 3 weeks until you give up your crown.
Yeah. Well, it's like 20 something days. I think it's like 20 days, 21 days or something crazy like that. And we leave for Miss Wisconsin week in like 19 or no, however less than that. I'm not really counting. I don't know. The numbers kind of
We just rolled out of bed. Like we don't do math at 10:18 in the morning.
I'm sure if I open my Instagram feed, I'll see at least 4 or 5 countdowns from the local title holders. So I will be up to date once I see that. How am I feeling? I haven't had a chance to process that this year is going to be over. I've kind of been thinking about it since February in some ways, but at the same time, it doesn't slow down. It's never ending. Like my last appearance is like 12 hours, ending 12 hours in Minnesota before I come back for Miss Wisconsin week. So there's really not a ton of downtime to be like, wow, this is rounding out. I'll be done in a couple of weeks. Like I don't know. I'm excited to do all of the appearances from now until the end of my year. And then life will just go on. And I will continue doing my thing. And we have some fun stuff planned and exciting things in my life that I'm really excited for. And I don't have a ton of strong feelings, actually. I'm excited to see who takes over. I'm trusting the fact that it will go into the right hands, as it always does. And that's that. So be it.
I think after you have a chance to process and settle into your former Miss Wisconsin life, we should probably do an episode about the transition and what that felt like for you. And I think that'll be really interesting because I remember it being just like a weird time. So we'll have to dive into that. But let's dive into what we want to talk about today, because this is actually important information for those of you that are competing in like MAO or USA state title competitions this spring, and then those that are preparing for. I know there's a couple of like national competitions coming up in June and in July as well. So
Or
for
even locals that are starting now for MAO and just
that's
I
true.
mean, there's a lot going on. It is quote unquote pageant season. It's really
It
ramping up.
is.
So, well, today's title, as you've probably already seen, is all about what you do during these few weeks leading up to competition, where we're at right now, but then also during the week or during the few days or the weekend when you're there and things will come up and you don't have your home and your bed to go home to, and you're not always eating the same meals that you're used to, and things can be different, and then emotions come up. And so, how to handle the craziness of competition week, and then also kind of the really, for the most part, low few weeks leading up to it, or you just don't really know what to do in the last few days or the last week or so leading up to it. So, it's today's episode.
All about mental prep and how to mentally prepare yourself for competition weekend or week or however long it is for you. We were talking yesterday about how we wanted to organize this episode, and we thought about, well, do we do a timeline of like 3 weeks leading up to competition, 2 weeks leading up to competition, and kind of a countdown, like what you should expect, in that way? And then we decided that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because feelings don't follow a timeline and things can come up. And I know from experience of competing multiple years that each year is a little bit different. And I've heard that from my clients too, of this year I feel totally calm compared to last year. Or, my brain is confused because usually I'm scrambling right now and I'm good. Or last year I was so calm and this year I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do with that. So everyone's going to be different because, well, you're all different people and also experiencing different things in your lives, and also hormones and circumstances and people and all of the things that actually can cause upset externally that y'all are dealing with. So we don't want to follow a timeline. We want to give just a solid list of tips and things that have worked for us and that we've learned from other people. And the point is that you don't have to implement all of these things. You just have to navigate what you need to do when you need something. So look at it like tools in a toolbox and knowing when you need to pull out the hammer and when you need to pull out the screwdriver, or when you need to pull out the wrench.
We kind of have it broken up from before competition and during competition, but a lot of these things are interchangeable, as a lot of the things that we talk about. I feel like we say this, but also that. Yeah, so we have our few weeks leading up to competition list, sort of. And then we have our during competition list. But a lot of the during competition stuff can and will seep into before competition. And you guys know what I mean. Take this as you wish. It's all encompassing, but for our organizational sake, talking, that's kind of how we've broken it up today. So,
Yeah, let's start with kind of one and two are one in the same. And it's going to sound really cliche, but extra self care. Extra self care during this time, nutrition, movement, rest, all the things that are going to help you build up your energy and resilience for kind of a tumultuous emotional and physical experience that can be pageant week. That sounds so dramatic. But when you're in rehearsals like all day, or you're running from like this luncheon to that autograph session to that parade, you're using up a lot more calories. You're using up a lot more mental energy than you typically would. So building up your resilience and kind of preparing your mind and your body for that is really important. So nutrition, making sure you're moving, but maybe not overdoing the movement, and accurate rest, and then additional self care stuff. So, in Fearlessly Authentic, we call it a glam plan. And part of the glam plan includes just the basic self care stuff, but then elevating that so that you're treating yourself kind of extra special and elevating your mood and your persona and the way you look and feel leading up to competition.
to me, it's like an energy bank. It's almost like it's almost like if you're playing The Sims and you get them, you get them reading
I
and you
never played that.
I was kind of obsessed in high school, if anybody knew me then. I'm like embarrassed to say, but and I still love The Sims. Okay, anyways. So it's like an energy bank. But seriously though, like you build all of this stuff up, you do all of these things and you're feeling good and it will deplete. It will deplete because you're doing other things, you're giving energy elsewhere. But the point is that you're doing enough so that energy bank doesn't completely go to zero. And that to me is a good visual because you're going to be running around during competition week. And frankly, it probably doesn't matter how much self-care you do. You will always feel exhausted during competition week for the most part, at some point, at any time, right? But knowing that it's almost like you have this bank of self-care that you can just reach into and that it'll kind of just boost you whenever you need it. It's almost a subconscious thing, right? Because I think that self-care, we can often think, ah, I'm laying on the couch with cucumbers on my eyes, or like I'm going to a spa. But I think that's like a really cliche way of looking at it. I think we don't realize that things like going to the grocery store and getting yourself good groceries instead of eating out for the 3 days beforehand because you just don't have time, like that is self-care. Remembering that you're still a human, remembering that you still need to do human things, and that kind of the basic needs are still being met. It's not always the extravagant, like we're gonna go to a spa and get like a full-blown massage. Actually, that sounds really nice if you do want to do
I
that.
was gonna say, give me
Yeah.
some cucumbers. I'm just gonna go hang out on the couch all day.
Actually, that is nice. But my point is, it doesn't have to be so out of your routine to where it feels like it's more work. That was always something for me as I was like, we came up with the glam plan and I was like, oh, more things for me to do. But no, it can just be those things that you should be doing every single day and can fall to the wayside because you are focusing on all these other things. I hope that makes sense. We went from
It
Sims to
does.
that.
Yeah, your battery. Your Sims battery. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think let's break down self-care a little bit because there are sometimes like me right now, if you listen to mindset versus mental health episode, we talked about baseline. And right now my baseline is a lot lower. I'm going through a little bit of a depressive episode that I'm working through in therapy and with my psychiatrist. But self-care for me right now looks like the very basic stuff: nutrition, hydration, fresh air, getting enough rest, going easy on myself, talking kindly to myself, catching myself when I'm being mean in my head. So sometimes even that feels like work. But when you're feeling good, those are the opportunities to do things that make you feel that much better.
Hmm.
Right. So the baseline self-care stuff that I'm talking about, those things like may feel a little bit like a chore, but they may make me feel a little bit better than I feel. Are they going to make me feel amazing? No, it's not really possible for me right now, but it is going to help me. So when we're talking about the glam plan, if you're feeling great, then yeah, treat yourself, do some extra skincare, take a longer shower, go get a massage if that's something that your budget allows for. Those little extra things can elevate you that much more. So it really is, there's no perfect recipe for this. It's just kind of a matter of knowing where you're at, knowing what you need, and knowing what's going to elevate you from wherever you're at.
Yeah, I like that. Know what you need.
Sometimes you don't, and that's why you have friends and family that might be able to assist you, not tell you what to do, but maybe provide some suggestions and some ideas. So self-care. But I think the next important piece to talk about here is making sure everything on your checklist is done.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes not having the things done and knowing that you've got multiple things unchecked can cause that much extra stress. And, for those procrastinators out there, hello, nice to meet you. Welcome to the club. My name's Rayanna. I procrastinate sometimes. That can make you feel really uneasy. So get neutral, get your stuff done on your checklist that you can control. That's where we go back to like what's within your control, what's not within your control, what is semi in your control, and just take care of it. I get that that's easier said than done, but that's why I said get neutral, get unemotional about it. Getting that checklist done and making sure that all those things are marked off and completed so that you don't have to think about it anymore. And then you can focus on the extra self-care.
Right. That's That's like not waiting till the last minute to get a pair of shoes or banking on somebody else to have a pair of earrings or all of those things that can often be left to the last minute. I know that a lot of that was left to the last minute for me going into Miss America for a lot of different reasons, and it did not help. I think that I didn't realize how much it would be unhelpful until it kind of became this residual, again, subconscious thing that when I was there, it was like, I haven't walked in my gown nor practiced in it, and I'm about to go compete at Miss America. The next time I'm in my gown and walking in my gown will be during competition at Miss America. We don't need that. We don't need that kind of stress. The week is stressful enough. We don't need to be thinking about the fact that our dress came in 24 hours ago. So take it from me, ladies. Honestly, I'm thinking back, like I could have just worn a dress that I already had. That would have probably been better for me mentally. And I'm like, I don't know why I did, but that's why I'm here. And that's why we give this advice because we learn from our mistakes and we want you guys to not make those same mistakes. So that's my example. That's my add-on to that. But I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Just making sure that you have the space to do that self-care then means that you have all of those tangible to-do list type things checked off.
Yeah, absolutely. And two things just to lead off of that. Number one is I'm thinking of all of you that maybe this is your first time competing, maybe those that don't have a whole lot of support on your team or are just really doing this solo. Ask for help. You don't know what you don't know, and that can cause a lot more anxiety. So if you feel like your checklist doesn't even include all the things you're supposed to be doing, that's a great time for you to reach out for help. And it was one of my greatest mistakes when I was getting ready for Miss America was feeling like I was supposed to be doing it all on my own. Otherwise, who would trust me with the job of Miss America? And that really
Mm.
led me down a negative rabbit hole. So ask for help. That was the first thing. And the second thing was
It'll come back.
okay, well, I forgot the second thing. So maybe it'll come up later, but asking for help. So the next thing is that's really important because now we've talked about like two ends of the spectrum. We've talked about the self-care piece, which takes, some time and making sure that all other things are taken care of or like balancing it out and trying to do both of those things. And then the checklist is on the other end of the spectrum. So this one is really important. And this spans across, well, literally every aspect of your life and everything that you do. But it's worth mentioning not judging what you are feeling or what you're not feeling. I'm hearing that a lot lately of, typically I would feel really stressed right now, but I'm oddly calm. And that's kind of freaking me out. I'm like, okay, so you're freaking out about not freaking out.
Hmm.
Makes perfect sense. That's so valid. Been there, done that. But we've got to start recognizing then that that's anxiety brain, that's limiting beliefs popping up, that's scarcity mindset, that's just fear. It's the fight or flight mode that your primal brain goes into. And so not like that's the first step is not judging what you are feeling or what you're not feeling and just
Well,
being okay with where you're at.
yeah, and to me that makes me think like, why would this need to be not fun? Like to me, it's like we've gotten so used to the fact that competition is stressful, competition is difficult, competition is emotional, and it is. It's all of those things, and it can be. But why does it have to be? Like, what if it is just fun and lighthearted? And what if it can be relaxing? Call me crazy. But when I went to Miss America, that was my week of, I kid you not, I woke up every morning and I was like, I don't have to worry about vacuuming my floors or doing my dishes or making my bed. Like, all I have to do is get up, look pretty, go hang out with some really awesome girls, and get on stage at Miss America. That's my day. I'm never going to get another day like that. So, I mean, yes, it is so emotional. And at the same time that I was feeling all of those like really relaxing thoughts, I was also stressed. But we don't need to be thinking that stress is helping us and that we need stress because that's going to help us do better in competition. I just think that it's like the fun that's how it should be. Like if you're feeling relaxed and feeling good about going into competition, that's what competition should be. And we say that this shouldn't be your life. And if this isn't fun for you, then it's not anything. And so I wish that we reframed that more. I wish the normal was feeling calm, even though it's not.
Yeah. And on the opposite end of that, I think it's important not to be afraid of the stress and not be upset about being stressed because that's normal too. And the second we can start to just normalize whatever we're feeling and just welcome it to the table, that's when it starts to nullify. That's when it starts to ease up a little bit. But it's when we add on the additional judgments and frustration with how we're feeling that causes the additional turmoil. So, both, like, there may be stressful moments, but they won't last forever. There will be joyful moments. They won't last forever. That's just part of the experience and part of our human capacity here in our lives. So, yeah, absolutely. It should be fun. And this is something that I have talked about lately too, of when you go to competition, again, whether it's just a day or it's a weekend or it's an entire week or more, when you're there, like Lila said, you don't have to worry about your job. You don't have to worry about emptying the litter box. You don't have to worry about doing your laundry or mowing the lawn or literally any of these other things. I've heard it described as like a summer camp, like
Uh-huh.
going to competition, which is a really fun way of looking at it because truly when you're there, you're just focused on you and your experience. And that is joyful. That is exciting. And I think that's part of why competition week brings out this excitement, this ease, and this like bug for the pageant world because the experience is just so uniquely fun in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Okay. Next on my list, I went out of order a little bit. So now I'm just kind of following what my gut is telling me to talk about. The next thing is getting clear on your visualizations and intentions of competition week. This is work that you need to be doing leading up to competition. And what do I mean by having visualizations and intentions? I mean that set your intentions of what you want to experience, not what you want to happen, not what you want the judges to think of you, not what you want the judges to ask you. Your intentions have nothing to do with anybody else's behavior, thoughts, or outcomes. It has everything to do with what you want to feel, what you want to experience. Lila and I set intentions every time before we hit record on this podcast of what we want to project into our messaging and to all of you and what we want to feel while we're doing it. It just sets us up for being consistent and focused on what we're doing. So, kind of setting your intentions not only for the entire week, but really break it down. Really look, if you've been there before, you know what to expect because typically the schedule looks pretty similar. If you haven't been there, it's going to be a little harder to set more specific intentions, but you can learn more about the schedule and set some easygoing intentions for yourself with expectations of what you think it might look like. And then the visualization part just elevates that much more. You should visualize yourself walking into interview and feel the feels of being in that interview room and imagine yourself just having the most incredible experience with interview. You should visualize yourself walking out on that stage in your evening gown and feeling so glamorous and so loved and just projecting that love back out into the audience and onto the judges. Visualize yourself doing your talent over and over and over and over again flawlessly to build up that confidence and build up that joy for what you do. Visualize the moment that you're called into finals, if that's your goal, or visualize the moment that that crown is placed on your head, if that's your goal as well. The, the key to visualizations is if you are in a bad mood, if you're stressed, if you're feeling yucky, don't do the visualization work. Do it when you feel good and only do it so long as your brain feels good about it. Because if all of a sudden a limiting belief catches up with you, or a fear catches up with you, or some level of yuck catches up with you while you're visualizing, that's it. We got to stop because we don't want to sit in that. We want to set those intentions and picture all the beautiful, good things that you want to experience that week. It's a fun activity. It could be categorized under self-care. It's almost meditative. And it really does set you up and sets your nervous system up for a better experience.
I was going to ask you, What are examples of intentions that are actually not worried about anybody else or actually not worried about the outcome of things? I guess we could just share what we said before this call, but I think that I want to give some examples because it actually took me a while to understand actually what that meant and that I was only focusing on myself and the energy that I was putting forth and what I wanted to experience.
Yeah, let's dive into this. We talked about it yesterday. What was your intention every time you walked into an interview room? Because I think it's just the most beautiful, powerful visual and intention ever.
Yeah, I you brought this up yesterday and I said, what did I say? Like I forgot that I even had this visual. I walk into the interview room and I take my heart out of my chest physically and I put it on the table in front of the judges and then I go stand at the podium and I talk. And when I leave the room, I don't take my heart back. It just stays there. And
Ooh, I
I
love it
know.
so much.
Thinking about it now even makes me emotional because that really mm, there's something about just connecting with people that you don't get that feeling anywhere else. You don't get that kind of emotion that you get when you're talking to somebody about something that you're passionate about and all they're doing is listening. And to me it just that visual helped because everybody says be authentic. Everybody says be real, be honest, be warm, be kind, do all these things, but that visual to me encompasses all of those things that I'm trying to do and trying to be. So, if that helps any one of you.
Yeah, my visual slash intention, because sometimes they bleed together, when I would walk into an interview room was just imagining myself like pouring light into that room from myself, like from my own body cavity, like into the room and filling every single nook and cranny and crevice in that room and just really leaving that light behind. And it wasn't about always having like a certain level of energy or a certain emotion. Like I didn't need to be like smiling the whole time or happy the whole time. It was just like this genuine light that I was pouring in. And I always had the intentions of, and it was the same thing when I would speak, any public speaking experience that I had. My intention was always, I will say what I'm supposed to say, when I'm supposed to say it, how I'm supposed to say it. And I believe that the people that need to hear it in the way they need to hear it will. So that was my intention. And so the only part that had to do with anybody else was my belief that whoever needed to hear it would hear it. And that just released any kind of pressure that I put on myself that I was supposed to inspire people or motivate people or convince them to hire me. Like that wasn't on me. I was doing my part of saying and believing that I said what I needed to say, when and how, and that it was received in that way.
When I first ask girls this, their intentions immediately go to, I don't want to be scared. I don't want to be nervous. I don't want to feel anxious. And one thing that we say is, but what do you want to feel? And so I think a really important part of setting intentions is focusing only on what you do want because that's at the forefront of your mind when you walk in. And then you're using your subconscious mind, which is something that we can get into in another episode. But then you're using your subconscious mind. And when you're saying the things that you do want to feel, your subconscious mind takes that over. And that's at the forefront of your mind. So instead of, I don't want to be nervous, I want to feel calm. I want to trust myself. I want to know that I have everything that I need. I want to know that I've prepared enough. And those are the things that switch in mindset really is so helpful, not just in a pageant interview. Like I'm going to do a commencement speech in a couple days and I want to feel, I want to trust myself. I want to feel joyful because I'm going to be at my alma mater. I want to do all these things. So these are tools that you can use. Again, we say this so much. You can use these tools in every single part of your life, but it is really powerful when it comes to competition, especially when it comes to an interview during a competition.
Right. Right. So just take a second right now as you're listening and say to yourself, I don't want to be anxious. And feel what that feels like. I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be anxious. And then say to yourself, I want to feel powerful. I want to feel at ease. I want to feel secure. I want to feel passionate. I want to feel love. okay. And then go back to, I don't want to feel anxious. Do you feel the immense difference in energy and power between those two statements? So much of mindset work is just figuring out what are you saying to yourself and how can you tweak it and adjust it to empower yourself that much more. Okay, so let's lead into then, because I think this is an interesting segue into leaning into comparison, because it starts to happen a little bit more as we get closer to competition. And the final note that I have on the pre-competition side of things is limiting your social media, which seems counterintuitive because I know so many of you are like, I need to do my social media plan and I need to be posting so that the judges would look and blah, blah. And there's so much pressure on putting in social media. What I like to say is post and run. Like post what you got to post and then get out.
Mm-hmm.
And also, please don't be afraid to just mute some of those that might feel a little intimidating to you. It's not personal. You're not like hating on them. It's just better for you. And that's good that you take some action toward things that are proactively good for you. It's not selfish, it's proactive.
Right. Yeah, I leading up to Miss Wisconsin, I always thought I wasn't doing enough appearances. Why would a judge pick me? Because I wasn't doing as many appearances as, say, another title holder that has a lot of appearances on the schedule. And that came down to just what it looked like on social media. And I was like, that is not a good enough reason. What things look like on social media is not a good enough reason to not pick somebody who is best for the job. And so I think we get in this place where it's like social media is the only place that people see us before they see us in person. And we really want it to be buttoned up and really good. And it can be, and you should focus on that in some sense. But at the same time, when it comes down to those couple weeks before competition, and yeah, maybe all the things are checked off on your list, and now maybe you do have a little bit of extra downtime, and maybe that does mean spending some time on your phone. You get that one post that says that one thing, it's a countdown, it's an appearance that was cool or whatever. And then all of a sudden it just like brings you right back into that place that you worked so hard to get out of. I've been there. It's really easy to fall back into that. I still can easily fall back into that. And so it's just knowing that social media is kind of fake too. Like you never know what that person went through that day. You never know the moment that was not captured, the second before that photo was taken or the second after. So it's just instead of fighting all those battles with you and instead of convincing yourself of all of these things after the fact, just like don't just forget about it. Forget that Instagram even exists. Like do what you got to do on there to make yourself feel good, like you feel like you're keeping up with your own brand and what you want to do. But after that, that's it.
Yeah, be intentional about the influences in your life. And I don't think we always realize what's actually influencing us because it's like little micro influences. So be really intentional. I mean, I've had people tell me about like a spiritual cleanse that they wanted to do where like all they did was listen to worship music for like 2 weeks leading up to the competition, and they spent a lot of time being intentional about prayer and meditation, and they even like went so far as to like that was all the beautiful, good, healthy things they were putting into their brain and into their mind, but they were also going one step above and trying to be really clean about what they're putting into their body and treating their body like a temple. So I just really liked that idea, but just being particular about what is influencing you. And then to capitalize on what you were saying, Lila, about this comparison and feeling like you're not doing enough because you see all these other contestants doing more and they're doing all these appearances or they're posting more and doing more with their initiative or whatever. You don't win with what you do. You win with who you are. Period.
Mhm.
That is all. Okay. Shall we dive into actual competition?
Yes, I think I'm more excited about this list actually. During competition, oh my gosh, I think I'm feeling all the feels right now because now I'm putting myself back into Lila last year, right around this time. I can almost think like pretty close back to the day. What are the things that are going through our heads, Ray?
Oh my gosh. So many things. Did I do enough? Is everything checked off?
What are we forgetting?
Yeah. What are the judges going to think? What are they going to ask me in interview?
Should I have done one more mock interview? I
Mm,
have done more
hate that
walking.
one. Should I
Uh,
have? Should I have? Should I have? Could I
uh-huh.
have? Could I have? Could I have? All those things. hmm It is really beautiful when you feel like, nope, I've done everything. I'm just ready to go. If you had to put me on the stage tomorrow, I'd be ready. And that's a beautiful feeling. That's not always. And usually you'll have moments of like, oh no, I didn't do enough of that. Or, I ate that piece of cake last night and oh, woe is me.
Eat that cake.
Eat that
Always eat
cake, girl.
cake.
Just have the cake. Speaking of, I have cake and brownies downstairs in my kitchen that I will be having for an early lunch. Um, so this is what happens when we roll right out of bed right before we record. Natural consequences. Okay. I'm gonna have you lead this. What do we do?
Okay. Well, when we think about the whole week, focus on your bigger picture and what your intention is to even become Miss XYZ in the first place. Why is it that you started this whole thing? What was the reason why you decided to get your resume together? All of the reasons why you answered on your fact sheet the way that you did. The reason why you picked your initiative in the first place. Those are the core values that we hold that only we will be able to offer. Like we truly, that is our uniqueness. And remember that every second along the way. Like it sounds so cliche, it really does. But at the same time, it's knowing that you forgetting a pair of earrings actually doesn't really matter if your ultimate goal is to become Miss Wisconsin and do this year round. Or you stumbling over an intro on stage doesn't actually matter if your goal is to give speeches as Miss Wisconsin during your year. Like, those are the things that really helped me because they're not looking for the perfect person. Things will happen. There are a lot of moments as Miss Wisconsin that I'm like, did that really just happen? Or like, wow, I really stumbled on that one or whatever, right? It's a year-round thing. You don't have perfect days every day, even though people think you should. And that is what you focus on the entire week. And I realized actually randomly last year, I was like, wait, this week is meant to prepare you for the job. This week is preparing somebody in this class for the next year of their life. So, what would you say to yourself during an entire year of your reign? I have forgotten things left and right. I have gone to appearances and realized like, oh, I'm supposed to talk today and I didn't have anything prepared. Like that happens all the time. What are you going to do then? So those things during competition week, like it's really pointing to a big picture thing. And so I
Right.
hope that that helps with the little things during the week. We can get really caught up in everything being really perfect and we're those type of women, but know that if you're focusing on what you know you want to do like at the end of your year or what if you were competing at Miss America. I just think that that's healthier and I think that it just makes things less deep or less impactful when they're really not.
I think too, for those of you that are listening that are like, I don't want to win. I don't want to be a state title holder. I don't want to be a national title holder. Like I'm here to
Mhm.
do my best. It would be great to be a semifinalist or to win a special award. I get that. My first year when I was competing, I really just wanted to make top 10. That was my goal. That was my big picture. And so my why looked a little bit different than the contestants that had been there year in and year out and actually really wanted the job. So whatever your big picture is, it's important to focus on that because once we deviate from the big picture and we start focusing on the like intricacies of the competition or the things that are going on day in and day out. I mean, I had a year, my second year at Miss Wisconsin, that I really struggled with focusing on the small, stupid things that really got under my skin. And it was just the momentum built in all of my frustration and nerves and anxiety because it was like I would get annoyed with the production crew or I was getting annoyed with a certain contestant or whatever. Like I had a rough year. I'm just going to be honest. I'm going to be real. And I learned a lot that year. I needed that year because in hindsight, after all was said and done, I look back and I was like, man, like I really lost my way of what I was actually there for. In that year, I was like, I really wanted to win, but I wanted to win because I felt like I had something to prove. I wanted to win because I just wanted to be the best. Like those things were not actually my genuine big picture. So the next year that I came back, shifting my mindset back into each phase of competition, all it matters is that I'm myself and I'm consistent and that I have a great time and stay focused on why I'm here in the first place. And some of you, it might be like your big picture is to just have that break from reality for a bit and spend some time with some really awesome women from, across the country, around the state that you live in. And that's beautiful. Do that. And then live and let live because everyone's going to have different intentions and different big pictures. And that's a beautiful thing.
It's like that's the point of all of this. Anytime you're in the moment and there are things happening, whether it's you want to become Miss America one day, or if it's just that you want your family all in the audience watching you on stage because they've never seen that before, whatever that is, at whatever level you're at, remind yourself and tell yourself that's the point. Like, that's the point of all of this. And you can remind yourself that throughout those moments that seem, like you said, like those intricacies. I like that word because we're worried about every little thing. Let me just tell you, like, do you remember what that one girl wore for earrings in that one competition in that one year? Like, no.
No. And also, how many times in your year as Miss Wisconsin did you forget a bunch of the little things and everything was fine?
Every day. It sounds like I really don't have it together. I really do. Like I have a good routine. I have what I need. I've never forgotten like a crown or a sash or anything big like that. You're never going to have it all figured out all the time. I literally have this in my speech for Sunday. I literally tell them all of these points and all of these things, and I get to the end of it and I say, now here's the catch. We're never going to have it all figured out. And here's the catch. We're never going to have it all figured out. So I'm going to end on that. And I feel like we've drilled that as much as we can. But I guess also if you're having trouble finding your bigger picture, if you're having some trouble knowing what your bigger picture even is, I think that sometimes the hardest part is to find that first. And if you're at that point, I mean, do a lot of self-reflection, do a lot of work on yourself, find people that remind you of why you are the way that you are and support you and who you are and what you do. And I mean, maybe it is just starting there. Maybe you have to compete. That was me. I had to compete a year in this organization to even know what my bigger picture was. And if that's the point that you're at, that's okay too.
Yeah, sometimes your bigger picture is just figuring out who you are. And that's beautiful work that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do. So definitely take advantage of that. We need to do an entire episode about stupid things that we did as title holders because I have a list of like, let me just give you one example really quick. As a local title holder leading up to Miss Wisconsin, I had like a photo shoot with a sponsor in Madison. It was a 2-hour drive from my hometown. My sister came with me. We were just being goofy and having fun the entire way. And we pull up to the photographer's office. And I got out of the car and shut the door. And I was like, oh my God. My sister looks at me. She's like, what's wrong? I said, I forgot all of my clothes at home. She's like, what? I just kind of stood there in shock for a second. She's like, what are you going to do? And I shrugged and I started walking up to his office and was like, I guess I'm going to go do a photo shoot. I don't know. Directors were there and like a board member of the local organization was there and she was great. She was a former title holder too. And so she's like, I'll go to my house and see what I have and I'll bring it over here and we'll just make do. And so I look back at those pictures still and I'm like, oh my gosh, it worked out fine. But like, what do you do? The show
Yeah.
must go on. It was crazy. I have more examples like that. So you're like, I've never forgotten anything major. I'm like, I have.
Well, now that I'm thinking, I have. And Yeah, we can get into this in another episode. That's funny. I would love to relive those. There's a lot of embarrassing moments for me that like people just don't see, and I'm like, oh my God. If people knew that Miss Wisconsin had to do this before she came, or like I was gonna go grab this from the store before I got like it just, oh my God.
Hilarious. Okay, so things happen. Roll with the punches. That I think is a really important message to just kind of wrap up that whole focus on your big picture. The little
Yeah.
things don't matter. Focus on what you can control. Be present in the moment. What's next?
Well, compartmentalizing is
Mm,
huge. Everybody always says, just focus on evening gown right now and then move on. That's fine. That's all you need to do. And then just focus on talent. And I was always like, how can you just focus on this one thing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, all of these things are happening all at the same time. No, they're not. Like,
mm-mm.
I realize you don't need more time than the 3.5 hours that they give you to get ready. I mean, plus or minus before a competition to get your hair done, your makeup on, your dress on, and make sure that your heels are okay and that you do a little circle in the hallway and you're good. Like, you don't actually need more time than that. And there's honestly nothing that you're going to be able to do in those few moments leading up that's going to significantly change what you do on stage. Because what should be happening is you get on stage and your brain shuts off and you go into autopilot in the sense that you've practiced everything, you're just there to enjoy it. You're not thinking about exactly where your hand placement is. And like we can all tell the people that are really thinking really hard on stage, and it shouldn't be that way. So compartmentalizing helps in the sense that you've done everything that you can. What am I going to do in the 30 seconds before I walk on stage that's going to make my performance better? All of that work happens in the months leading beforehand, and you have to trust that your body knows that you've done all that work. So it really is really helpful to only focus on talent if that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm not worried about where my evening gown is. I'm not worried about how I'm walking during then. It's more fun that way. And I don't know how else to describe it. And that's that. And then I know what you're going to say next. So jump in.
Do you know what I'm going to say next?
Onwards and upwards.
I was going to say that later, but first
Oh,
I was going to
okay.
say maybe an easy way of, wow, you just know me so well. All my mastermind girls are like, yep, onward and upward. No, in terms of compartmentalizing, I think one way to think of it, and we've already talked about it a couple of times, is be intentional right then and there. Those 30 seconds before you go out on stage, be intentional, like set your intentions for what you want to experience on that stage. That I think is a really good way to get focused on what is going on in the here and now.
Hmm.
Like in each new thing that you're doing throughout the day, whether it's, you know, putting on your makeup or going down to breakfast or hopping on the bus to head off to rehearsal or being at rehearsal or preparing for interview or whatever, be intentional in each moment based on what you've got coming up next. I think that's a one tangible way to think about how to compartmentalize so that you're not focusing on, like, if interview is done, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to think about that when you have a talent rehearsal coming up next. It makes more sense to be intentional about what you want your talent rehearsal to feel like. So setting intentions, I think, is just a really powerful thing.
It's
And
amazing.
then when you're done, onward and upward, we move on for that exact same reason. We can't control what we've done in interview. We can't control how our talent went. We can't control what we said on stage and on stage question. We just can't. Can't control the fact that we slipped a little bit on our dress when we were walking in evening gown. People probably didn't even notice. So we have to move on. So with that, again, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Don't judge it. And then onward and upward.
It's amazing how all of these points connect, really.
I know. I keep thinking about that. I'm like, we've already covered all of this. Now
I
we're
know,
just
right?
applying it in a different scenario.
Right, exactly. We have not worrying about things that we can't control on this list, but that's difficult in the moment when you haven't done a lot of the work beforehand. I mean, in my everyday life, I think, is this in my control? Is the weather in my control? No. Is the construction outside of my house in my control? No. But is me choosing to exercise in my control today? Yeah, sure, if I have time. Is me choosing a certain meal to make or even choosing to cook in my control, yeah, absolutely. Um, that's just an easy way to know what to prioritize during the week. There's a lot of mindset work that has to happen before you get to that point of like knowing what to control and what not to control and being able to recognize that. But during the week, once you get to that point, it's like you can literally forget about it, erase it, delete it out of your mind if it's something that you decided that you cannot control. What time the bus leaves, what shirt you have to wear that day, like what activities you're doing, or what they served for breakfast. X, next, delete. It's out of your mind. And that frees up so much more space to A, be able to enjoy what you're doing. And then also just not having that energy put into places that really don't matter, and you're wasting all this energy on stuff that doesn't matter. And that's that. I think it's so self-explanatory, but we did have that point. So
Well, notice the things that Lila didn't say. She didn't say, focus on what you can control, like what other people think and what the judges are going to ask you in interview and the scores that they're going to put down and how the other contestants are going to perform. And gosh, who's going to be in top 10? And oh my gosh, who's going to be in top 5? And am I going to win? Am I not going to win? Yeah, you can't control any of that.
mm-mm.
So we try really hard not to focus on any of those things. That's where being intentional, being in the moment, being focused on what you've got going on right in front of you is really important, which sounds a little counterintuitive to our big picture conversation. But just because you're focused and intentional in the moment doesn't mean that you aren't also focusing on like your big picture driving your intentions within that moment. So I think that's important to note.
Well, right. Well, actually, I think it's totally connected because if you're intentional in the moment, it means that you're focusing on what you know you have to offer and what you know you have to control. And that is your bigger picture. I think it totally makes sense. So,
Mm.
yeah, and I don't think it is counterintuitive at all.
Well, good. So anything about the outcome, though, I mean, that was always future Rihanna's problem. That was always future Lila's problem. Like let's not sit here and dwell in what may or may not be because we'll handle anything that comes. We got to trust ourselves, trust future us. They'll be able to handle it. We've gotten through disappointment before. We've gotten through celebration before. We'll be able to handle it.
I wanted to end the episode on this, but we have one more point that we're going to give before we end this episode. But I want to say this now is that notice that none of this has anything to do with winning or placing. None of anything that we said has anything to do with if you want this, do this. If you want a place like this, do that. Here's what you should do. Because our goal, me and Rayanna's goal through all of this is so that you guys have the best experience that you can. Because I always go back to that interview with Madison, Miss America, and how she said that she won Miss Colorado and felt like she lost the experience of it. We never want you to lose the experience of it. We never want you to miss out on that self-discovery that happens during all of this. We never want you to lose out on the connections that you make with people, the things that you learn about yourself, and the things that help you grow as a person, and all of the incredible things that you get out of pageantry that ultimately, like, we live the other, what, 340 some days of our lives as just humans. And this is stuff that applies to all of the 365 days and not just those 3 days on pageant weekend. So I wanted to point that out.
I love that. That applies to being in school, whether that is high school, undergrad, master's, doctoral program. It applies to your career. It applies to being an entrepreneur. It applies to wedding planning. It applies to preparing to have a baby. It applies to raising said baby. It applies to romantic relationships or friendships. It applies to literally every aspect of your life. And that's why I love mindset work so much, to the point where sometimes when we get into like the nitty gritty of pageant stuff, I'm just like, ugh, all right, if we have to
Right.
talk about this.
Right.
So yeah, point well made. As when Lila said, notice how we haven't said anything about winning or getting into finals. I was like, mind blown. Like I knew that, but when you said it, I was like, yep, that is
Yeah.
such a clear point, well made.
Yeah. On that note, we have one last thing. I actually think we don't think about this very often. I guess you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but last year I realized I looked up at one point in our dressing room backstage, and it was before a it was before a preliminary competition, and most of us were ready, but we still had that downtime to where if you wanted to warm up, you could warm up. And a lot of people were calling or texting their families. I am all for keeping connection with your families. Don't cut them off during the week. They can be some of the best people to have in your corner when you need it. Please keep in contact with them. Don't ignore them. But it gets to a point where once you've texted enough about something, once you've talked enough about something, you're good. Like, I didn't need to text my mom for 2+ hours about what happened in my interview. We would talk about it afterwards if it came up, or, we over drinks or at dinner or whatever it was. But you don't need to be on your phone so much that like you're not even interacting with the people next to you anymore. And I get it. Sometimes you don't want to be interacting with everybody all the time. I'm very much an introvert, and sometimes energies will exhaust me. But find anything else than just like slamming on your keyboard on your phone. And like, it's just that cannot be helpful. That cannot be energizing. And it's probably not very calming. And you're probably focusing on a lot of stuff that's out of your control when you're just going back and forth with somebody in a text message about the competition that you're about to do or what you did yesterday. So I wish I knew this like when I was a teen competing, when I had went to any national competition as a younger person. Like, I wish I knew that you don't need to be updating people all the time or talking about the competition all the time on your phone while you're still in it.
Well, you had a different experience from me in that you were allowed to have your phones backstage. I was so
Ah,
shocked when all of a sudden you started texting me at Miss America from backstage on preliminary night. I was like, what is happening right now? We were not allowed to have our cell phones at Miss America. We put them in like little cubbies with our name and title on them, like
yeah.
literally when we entered the dressing room, and then we got them back when we left. And even at Miss Wisconsin, we were not allowed to have our phones at all during the day if we were at rehearsals. So that was like just a very unique perspective. And I know that it's very real, especially because so much, expected of you is to be posting on social media. And I think that's different than what Lila's talking about, which is, like she said, like going back and forth with mom or with a friend or with boyfriend, and it can become a
Even
slippery slope.
director.
Yep, exactly. So, say what you need to say, get it off your chest, and then put it to bed. And then let's move on, because otherwise you are risking, like Lila said, focusing on the things that don't matter, focusing on the things outside of your control, and then really losing out on the experience and getting the most out of the experience that you possibly can. So, um, yeah.
There was
Uh,
even there was even at one point where it was probably you. And then I remember clearly that my local director at the time obviously would keep in touch throughout the week. She was incredible at supporting me throughout the week. And I realized there was at one point, I think it was probably after my interview, where I wanted to keep talking about it. I wanted to keep going at it. And you know how you just know in a text message when somebody's like done talking to you? Like, there's just no more to say, right? And it's like respectful, it's fine, but it happens when you're texting. And I realized at one point, like, wait, this conversation's over. We're done. And like she had been the one to kind of insinuate that, like, okay, cool. See you at blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, like we're done. So I think it's
Yeah.
helpful
It
as
was
a
almost like a
supporter.
habit that you had of like I think we get into that habit of like we want to hash the whole thing out and it's so exciting and we've got this adrenaline going and so we're going and going and going. But then if you can break that habit and really release it and just be like, oh yeah, like otherwise it's going to lose its excitement.
Yeah. And if you're a supporter, like we don't need to keep going back and forth. This goes back to our For the Supporters episode too. Like, you also have the power to not go back and forth with your girl when you know that she's backstage preparing for a competition. Like, there were many times that I texted my mom, "Okay, we're done talking now. I'll see you on stage." Like, we're done. And it was so helpful because imagine you're thinking of a conversation that you're having with somebody on your phone in a text conversation while you're about to go on stage. Like, I can't imagine, but I know it happens. So yeah, kind of a new tip because it's new to have phones and social media so accessible and to be like required or at least highly encouraged to post on social media during the week is a very different thing now than it was even 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So just know when to be done with your phone. Ugh, I have such a love-hate relationship with my phone, but if you can recognize like this conversation's over and I'll see them in person and we'll talk about it then, like that was one of the healthiest things that I was able to do. Because then I found myself journaling.
Well, I think this speaks to also, I mean, we've had an episode about your inner circle and knowing like who your support system is and being able to kind of like weed through the people that are not the most helpful to you. And, if you're texting people that maybe are not the most helpful in validating your feelings or helping you move past it. I mean, an example of that was, I've talked about Lila when you were at Miss America. And I was like, I am not going to join you in this hole that you're in, but you can take my hand and climb out if you'd like to. Like,
Mhm.
I think oftentimes we are texting people, misery loves company, right? Like, we're texting people that are helping us just hash out our frustration with something. And that's not helpful either. So, to the supporters and to all of you that are competing, like, recognize that that's not a healthy thing to do. There will be plenty of time later to hash it out if you still need to, but really it's pointless in the moment because it's out of your control. What's done is done.
Exactly. That's all we got.
Cool. I mean, I think we could just keep going on and on and on.
The thing is,
Um,
each one of these points that we made could have its own episode,
yes.
which is comforting because I love that there are so many things that we could talk about. But
Well, it's true though, because I mean, even in coaching sessions, if I have a half-hour session or if I have an hour-long group call, sometimes we are just talking about one of these things. And then in that one thing, just one aspect of it. So there's so much more to dive into. And that's where, again, pointing out that mindset work cannot be done in just like a quick session or, an intensive. It is daily practice, and it's daily practice in every facet of your life. It is learning how to think differently and talk to yourself differently so that it is more helpful to you and that you are setting yourself up for success. It is just practicing different ways of living and practicing different ways of approaching circumstances in your life and approaching relationships in your life. It's also not the same thing as therapy. So I'm not going to go to a mindset coach right now to talk about my depression because they would probably make me feel worse. It's just not the same thing. So, yeah, that being said, like, I hope this is helpful. I know it's kind of coming at a time where some of you are probably already done competing, or, maybe you're competing this weekend. But hopefully it'll help you at least reflect and learn from the experiences that you've had and be able to apply it in the future as well. So with that, I think I have depleted everything that I intended to do today. So I feel pretty satisfied about that. How about you?
yeah, I agree. Let's go get ready for our photo shoot.
Yes. Okay, cool. Here we come, Jessica, in like 5 hours. All right, y'all. Take care. DM us if you've got more topics that you want to hear about. We want to be talking to you about things that are pertinent and relevant to your lives and what you've got going on in the pageant world and with mindset work. So, yeah, feel free to DM. We love hearing from you. And
Mhm.
until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Hey, you guys, if you love what you're hearing on Sash and Soul and you're preparing for a pageant competition, you have to check out our free online training, 3 Keys to Winning the Crown. In this game-changing workshop, you'll discover the secrets to owning the interview and the stage with a winning mindset and humble confidence. This transformative session will empower you to cultivate a fearlessly authentic mindset and learn how to embrace your unique strengths, conquer limiting beliefs, and radiate confidence on and off the stage. You'll master the art of communication and discover powerful strategies to captivate judges and audiences with your unique voice and message.
Click the link in the episode summary or visit fearlesslyAuthenticCoach.com to claim your spot in this complimentary training. Your journey to greatness starts